Hey everybody, thank you for joining us at Taste of Baltimore on behalf of the National Kidney Foundation. It is such a pleasure to be with you tonight to share a great recipe. We're going to be cooking up tonight for you a blackened striped bass with an Old Bay Esquites. Now, if you are not familiar with Esquites, Esquites is a traditional Mexican dish. It was like a corn salad. So it's charred corn with peppers, jalapenos, cilantro, and two secret ingredients that are just awesome. The first is Old Bay. The second is a little bit of mayonnaise, and there's actually one more, cotija cheese. So this is a great dish that's savory, it's a little spicy, and it's just so delicious. So I am really excited to share it with you. So let's get started. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to make our esquites because we're going to let that cool just a little bit. Now I wanted to show you a really fun hack. When you're making esquites, you're going to take the corn off of the cob. There's another dish called elotes that you might be familiar with that actually is left on the corn. So for elotes, you would take the corn, grill it, then dip it or spread it with mayonnaise and then finish it off with the cotija cheese. But for esquites, it's a little bit easier to eat when you're serving it with the striped bass. But I wanted to show you a really interesting trick on how not to make a mess when you're cutting off your corn. And it involves using a bunt pan and a sharp knife. Now, sometimes when you're cutting corn, whether this is to make a corn salad or a corn salsa, the esquites dish, or you just prefer to eat corn off the cob, when you're trying to cut it off, cobs go flying everywhere. Kernels go flying everywhere. This is a nice little hack that keeps things sort of tidy, not flying all over your cutting board. So you put your corn cob right onto the bunt pan and then just start to cut down. You might get a little bit of flyers coming out, but I can guarantee you that it will keep most of the corn right into the pan. So make sure that you don't cut too deep. You want to go through and make sure you get all the corn. On average, one cob of corn will get you about 1 cup of kernels. So we'll do the second one here. We're going to put this down. Continue to cut down. Now, there's nothing better than summer corn. We are not in summer right now, but you can still find some really good fresh corn at your local grocers. Or if you can't find it, frozen corn is fine too. Grab a bag of frozen corn, let it thaw out before you start to make this recipe, and it'll be really good. Make sure you grab a nice sweet corn. So we've got about 2 cups of corn here that we're going to use for our esquites. Next, we're going to grab a bell pepper. So when I cut bell peppers, I have a fun little trick that I like to do, and it's just a matter of squaring off the 4 sides. What this does is it actually leaves all the seeds inside. There's a million ways to cut a bell pepper. This is the way that I like to do it. You can see that everything is left inside, no mess, no fuss. If you want to, trim down here, you certainly can to get all those great pieces, but you're leaving most of the ribs inside. So we're going to dice this up real quick. This would be like a small dice, maybe a 1/4 inch or so, because this will cook down a little bit. So as we cut through this, let me just walk you through the rest of the recipe. It's really important that when we go to cook the corn and the peppers together, we want to get a nice little bit of char on them. If this were the summertime and we didn't have snow on the ground, we could actually go out and take the corn and the peppers and just do them right on the grill, which would be fantastic. But we're going to do them in a saute pan here today. So we're going to take and we're cutting our bell peppers into nice even strips. When you're thinking about cutting and cooking things, uniform sizes are really important because then things cook much more evenly. So as we're cutting our bell pepper, we want to make sure that we're trying to have nice uniform pieces. And then this is the bottom of the pepper that we've just kind of squared off, cutting through this. And step 1 is done. So we're just going to put all of this right into our bunt pan. I'm guessing most of you have never used a bunt pan to prep veggies in. I hope you learned something. So now we're going to go over and we've got 2 tablespoons of butter. We've got our corn, we've got our red bell pepper, and we've got a nice hot pan over here. So we're going to take 2 tablespoons of butter. You can see that butter is immediately starting to melt and brown a little bit. Start to move that around, and it's fine if the butter starts to brown just a little bit, because that'll add just a great flavor. And most of it's melted. We're going to go ahead and add in our peppers and our corn. We're going to spread it out so that you've got, most of the surface area of the pan covered. And then we're going to leave it. And that's what's going to help us give that nice char to the corn. So the next step of this recipe, once that corn is finished charring, we're going to allow it to cool for, just a few minutes to get the heat off of it. Not down necessarily to room temperature, but we want to take some of that heat. So we're going to come back. We've got a jalapeno here. I love jalapenos. I think the recipe calls for maybe 2 tablespoons. I'm going to add the whole pepper in there. Again, you can see that I'm using the same technique where I'm trimming down the sides of the pepper. That doesn't leave me with a ton of seeds, just a few seeds left on the board here that I can easily get rid of. We're going to cut this a little bit smaller. I love jalapenos. I love grilled, roasted, fresh jalapenos. We're going to cut this a little bit smaller in case you have some folks that aren't necessarily chili lovers in your family. They just get then a small bite. If you love jalapenos, you do you. If you want to put 2 jalapenos in, feel free. So we're going to chop this up into a fine dice, or small pieces. And this is going to get added. This won't get cooked. We'll add this fresh into the corn salsa in another step. Now, the one thing that I love about this dish is that it utilizes Old Bay in kind of an interesting and an exciting way. Blackening usually is a technique that you use a Cajun seasoning with, or there are Zatarain's has a blackened seasoning that we sell that's just absolutely fantastic. It's a great mix of garlic and red pepper and black pepper and chilies that really bring the flavor and the heat that you might expect. But I love how we're twisting up, using a regional favorite. Everybody loves Old Bay, right? I've got at least 2 jars in my cupboard at home. But it gives it a great twist by using it as a blackening seasoning, as well as we're going to be adding it into the Esquites, which again gives a traditionally Mexican dish a very Baltimore twist to it. So we've got one green onion here, about 2 tablespoons that we're going to finely chop. We'll add that to our jalapenos. And then we're going to take a little bit of cilantro as well. I love cilantro, and that wasn't the case always. I really was not a cilantro lover for a lot of years. There is a trait where some people really get the flavor of cilantro as soapy and not delicious. For whatever reason, my palate changed over the years to where I really love cilantro now. So, in this dish, it is a key element, whether you're making guacamole or other salsas. Cilantro really brings that fresh green flavor to it and is a perfect companion to the jalapeno. So we've got a couple of tablespoons of cilantro there. We're going to go ahead and add that in with our scallions and in with our jalapeno. So let's take a look one more time at our Esquites. I feel like we're looking good. We've got some nice corn, some nice char on the corn and the peppers. So at this point, what I want to do is I'm just going to go ahead and turn this off and just leave it alone just for a little bit. We've got 1 or 2 more steps to do. So it's okay for that corn to hang out a little bit over there and just start to cool down a bit before we go to finish it off. But now here comes the second star of the show. We've got some striped bass. So I've been out on the bay before. I have a buddy who has a boat, and we've gone out striped bass fishing. Just what a great day that was. It's cold to go fishing right now, but you can find it right now in the grocery store. Just what a great day. What a great fish. It's a good eating fish. So we're going to use, again, Old Bay as the hero of the blackening seasoning. So we're going to take a few teaspoons of Old Bay. We're just going to go ahead and sprinkle this right on the top. So we want to coat each piece of fish really liberally with about a teaspoon of Old Bay. This dish, the recipe calls for 4 servings. I have 3 fillets here, one for me, one for Lou, and one for Jordan. So we're going to have a pretty good lunch today. But once you get this on, just press that seasoning down into the fish a little bit so that when you go to turn it into the pan, that seasoning doesn't come off. If you want to let it set on there to kind of set the seasoning in, I think that would be great. So when we go to blacken, again, we want our pan to be nice and hot. So I'm going to turn this up just a tiny bit more. I had it just sort of holding on low, and that's the great thing about using cast iron, is that will really hold the heat really, really well. So I'm going to turn this up, and when you blacken, we like to use a combination of butter and oil. The butter is going to give you flavor. The oil is going to give you sort of the heat tolerance that you need to get that heat as hot as you want. You'll see that when we put this into when the pan gets to temperature, you'll see that there is, sort of a smoke show that comes up out of this. So I would highly recommend, if you're making this at home, turn the exhaust fan on your right above your stove to help pull some of the smoke that comes up. You could also do this out on your grill if you've got a side burner on your grill. This really is just a great dish. And you know what? Even if your pan's not quite hot enough, that's okay. It might be just more a little bronze than it is blackened, and I think that's perfectly fine. So what we're going to do here is we're going to add our last tablespoon of butter to the pan. You can see again that that's getting nice and hot. And then we're going to add a little bit of oil to the pan as well. So you're really looking to have, a nice bit of oil in the mixture of oil and butter. That's going to help your pan or your fish to not stick to the pan. Now, I will say that when you go to add in your fish into the pan, you need to be really, really careful, because this oil is going to be super hot. And there is a technique that we always make sure that folks know, and this is something that I learned the hard way when I was a restaurant chef, is that I was working, it was a Saturday night, we were working hard. I put a piece of blackened redfish in and caught a little burn that stuck with me for quite a few years. So when you're putting something into hot oil, it's really important that when you put it in, you're actually putting the fish into the oil away and putting it in away from you. That way, if there is a little bit of splash, you're not going to have that issue of the oil splashing back on you. So here we've got the rockfish fillets. We're going to go ahead. One thing you don't want to do is crowd the pan. That's why I'm using a nice large 12-inch cast iron skillet. We're going to add the fish right into that, and then we're just going to let it set. The thing with blackening is that you don't really want to disturb that very much. You want to get that seasoning to form a nice crust on the fish. So resist the want to kind of move that around. Just let that crust form. Let it go 3 minutes, 4 minutes without actually using it. If you need to take a peek, don't pick it up and look at it. Just literally take a peek underneath to see if you've got that crust. So while our fish is blackening, we're going to go ahead and finish off our esquites. So to finish this off, of course, we're going to grab a little bit more Old Bay. We're going to add a teaspoon to this dish, sprinkle that in. And then we're going to take our mayonnaise. A lot of you may not know that McCormick does sell mayonnaise. This is mayonnaise with lime. We are the #1 mayonnaise in Mexico, and this is available here in certain stores. So we're going to add about 3 tablespoons. You can tell I don't really measure a lot. I do measure some things, but I think that I love to kind of cook by feel and cook by intuition and cook for yourself. That's the way people love to modify and adapt recipes, to cook the way you like it, the way your family likes it, the way your loved ones like it. So we're going to go ahead and add in our diced jalapenos, our cilantro, and our green onion. And then we're going to take half of a lime and squeeze that in as well. And that's going to add some brightness and some acidity. And if you want a little more lime, you add a little more lime. So you can see that the Esquites takes on this really nice appearance of this creamy corn salad. And there's so many flavors in there between the jalapenos and the roasted corn, the roasted peppers, the cilantro, and then we're going to finish it off with this is cotija cheese. So this is sort of a salty, crumbly Mexican cheese that is traditional both in the Esquites as well as the elotes. And that just really finishes this off. That, you know, we've got a lot of flavors going on there, and that this just brings just a nice bit of salty goodness that's gonna complete it. So you notice that we're not adding any additional salt. We just got the, you know, the salt that's in the Old Bay as well as the salt that's in the cheese. So we're going to go ahead and flip our rockfish now. You can see that it's got a nice crust on it. It's ready to flip. It's looking great. It's not burnt. Now, when you hear the word blackened, sometimes you might think that, you know, I really want that to have really dark and burnt. And that's really not the case. You can also tell that, you know, I've left the skin of the fish on here. You can remove that if you don't like that, but the beauty of this is that because you're blackening it, you're using a high heat method, that fish skin should get nice and crispy. I love crispy fish skin, but it's got to be cooked just right. So we're going to let that go another 2 or 3 minutes, and then we will be ready to plate up and eat. So it looks like our fish is done. You know, we've let it go another few minutes on the skin side. You know, I love fish that's just cooked. You know, so that way it remains, you know, flaky and moist and juicy. So this is looking really, really good. I'm excited for this. It's been a while since I've had some rockfish, so very excited to get this dish in my belly. So here we've got the Esquites. You can see that, you know, the great color from that. We're going to put a little bit down right in the center of the plate. We're going to plate the fish on top of that. So, you know, you can see that corn salad goes a long way. And this is a corn salad really that can hold in your refrigerator. So this is great, you know, warm like this. It's also wonderful cold. So I really encourage you, if you're going to make a batch, actually make a big batch that you can go back to each and every time. So we've got our fish. We're going to go ahead and put the fish down. I can tell just by the sound that skin on the bottom really is nice and crispy. And then we're going to garnish with just a little bit of lime. And just a touch more cilantro. You know, if you're using things that, you know, are pre-prepared, if you use the frozen corn, even if you don't, you saw how quick and easy that was to bring this dish to life. Surprise your friends, surprise your family, you know, bring a new dish to them. It's a great way to show Old Bay in so many ways. We know that we love Old Bay on everything. We put our Old Bay on our Old Bay. So just bring a dish that's inspired by Maryland and a dish that's inspired by Mexico with a little bit of Louisiana thrown in. So I really hope that you enjoy that. I hope I've inspired you to make this. You can find this recipe on McCormick.com. It's blackened striped bass with Old Bay Esquites. Thank you so much. You know, really enjoyed being a part of Taste of Baltimore on behalf of the National Kidney Foundation. Thank you so much and hope you have a great night.